you guys know this is where it's supposed to be. There we go. How about that? I don't know what that is.
That's good. That's it.
That's not nice at all. We can start the pledge and I can work on it.
Okay. Let's go ahead and say the pledge.
I wasn't on the right thing. They should know better than to put me over here.
I
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight. To get started, we need to amend and or accept tonight's agenda. Anybody have any amendments?
Motion accepted as presented.
Supported. Motion support for tonight's agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? At this time, it is time for public comment, which is limited to 3 minutes per person. Seeing none, we will move on to our audit presentation with Mr. Derek Graham.
Alrighty, thank you.
Bet.
Thanks for the introduction. Good evening, and thanks for having me. As you mentioned, my name is Derek Graham, here from UHY to discuss and present the June 30th, 2025 audit. Those of you that have been on the board for a few years are used to seeing Scott Hunter here to go over this. So a little bit changing of the guard there with that. I'll try to hit on all the stuff he typically goes over, but if he goes over something that I missed, feel free to grab me or ask a question while I'm going through or at the end. Goal here tonight is really just to highlight some things within the audit, keep you guys, informed, but still be brief. Just, overall it was a good year financially and both with compliance or financial reporting and controls and everything regarding that. No findings to report, anything there. So overall, nothing but good news you're gonna hear from me tonight. Just to start off, in the audit packet, it looks like everyone's got things I'm gonna discuss tonight. Just gonna have you flip to page 1 to 3. Just touch on, so the opinion we gave on the audit, which is no different than years past, is what's called the unmodified opinion, and that's the highest we can give. One thing new to this year, and I just wanted to point that out, it's the change in accounting principle, about 2/3 of the way down that first page. So there was a new accounting standard, GASB 101, had to do with how we account for and show the sick and vacation liability. Had to make some changes to that based on this standard that overall increased the liability for McBain, but for pretty much every school throughout the state as well. So I just wanted to point that out, that technically that's considered what's called the change of accounting principle, or required us to report liability a little bit different than it's been done in past. Having put the audit aside for a second, we'll jump back to that. But there's a page that's got some graphs on it in front of you. Just gonna talk about that here before we get into the audit. So right here is just the general fund only, and it's a 5-year, basically, historical information on the general fund and the revenues and expenditures associated with that over the last 5 years. I'd like to provide this. Not only I think it's good to refer to when you need to, but also it's nice to kind of see how years stack up. Certainly the last 5 at least that are the most relevant. Upper left-hand corner in that graph, so that's taking all the data from the right side. You get revenues in blue, expenditures in red, and the fund balance in green. Just kind of looking at that, I think it always tells a trend or a story. You can see that, both revenues and expenditures increased quite a bit from 21 to 24, and then this last year is where we really see both of those level off and, not have that increase that we've had those previous years. And you can see that from the 24 to 25 numbers over to the right. Both the revenues and expenditure numbers in total very close between the last 2 years. Looking at that 2025 column, which is the current year, you'll see that revenue is about 15.43 million, and then expenditures about a little under 15.2 million. leads to an increase in fund balances last year of $245,000. Bringing the overall general fund balance to about $3.266 million, is where that ends up at the end of the year. And then as a percentage of that fund balance to the current year expenditures, that computes to 21.5%, which maybe some of you are familiar with, or maybe you haven't, but the state kind of defines what a healthy fund balance is for that general fund based on your expenditures. That's somewhere between 15 and 20%. So obviously at 21.5, exceeding that, the top end of that threshold, and kind of what they define as being healthy. Lastly, just on this, the bottom left hand corner graph, that's the pupil count over the last 5 years. Just looking at this, you can see increases each of the last 4 years, which is great news. Great to see. As you are aware, a lot of state funding, revolves around that count. So it's awesome to see that increasing. Gonna put this down and have you jump into the audit book unless there's any questions on this. I can take it at the moment. Alrighty. Page 52 in the audit, I'll have you flip to. We're gonna continue chatting about the general fund a little bit more and kind of look at the numbers, how they compare to budgeted figures for the year. So you should see budgetary comparison schedule. You should see 2 funds listed there, and then within each fund there's 4 different columns. You got for the general fund is all we're talking about right here. You got the original budget, final budget, actual, and then a variance between the final and actual. That original budget, that don't really spend too much time chatting about that. That was in June of 24. A lot of unknowns, especially with the budget, more so this year than last year, but still with getting those numbers, a lot of times you don't have those in time, so don't really talk much about that budget. More focus on the final budget compared to actual. And that final budget was officially adopted at your June 2025 meeting, so a lot more comparable and relevant to the actual data. That final budget for in June of 2025, predicting about a $94,000 increase to that general fund balance. Looking over at that actual column and right next to it, you see that same 245,000 number that we just looked at on that previous page. That was the increase in general fund. So had a bigger increase than our budget was showing by about 151,000, which is less than 1% of the expenditures for the year. So that's a very close variance to fall there. So overall, the final budget compared to actual, overall being less than 1% is close. And you just kind of look at between the revenues and expenditures. For revenues, almost spot on, $5,200 difference between what was budgeted and the final results. And then so the variance of 151 is more tied to expenditures. And there's really not one thing there that stands out. There's kind of just a cushion built in each of those different activities that are listed out there as far as the variance goes. A lot of things over budget, or under budget, sorry, by a few $1,000, so nothing there really stands out. From there, I'll have you flip to page 60. So far, just discuss the general fund. We'll go over a few of the other funds of the district. On page 60, listed out here are what are considered the non-major funds. We're dealing with, in total, smaller revenues, smaller assets, which create the non-major. Title on those, and there's 3 funds there that you'll see. You see Student Activities Fund, the School Operated Public Library Fund, and then the 2023 Debt Retirement Fund. Student Activities Fund had a slight decrease in fund balance for this year. That was about $13,000. The Library Fund, slight increase, about $5,300 in its fund balance for this year. And then the Debt Retirement Fund had an increase of $19,000 for this last fiscal year. From here, we can flip to page 20 and 21. You should see at the top after McBain Schools and McBain, Michigan, the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. It worked left to right. Kind of talk about each of the funds listed out there individually. General fund, which is on 21, or 20 and 21. Those are the same numbers we looked at on the page with the graph, and then also on page 52. So we're gonna jump past that one. And the next fund there is the 2023 Capital Project Fund. As you guys are aware, this fund started in the last fiscal year with about 2 million or so of bond proceeds. And then on 21, you can see that the ending fund balance for this fund is just over 4,000. So essentially, this fund was done in this last fiscal year. It's considered substantially complete. And there was just some dollars there waiting for some final expenditures, and that's gonna get transferred over to the debt fund associated with it. Sinking fund wise, the sinking fund was new last year, and then it was levied for, I believe, 10 years, so there's 8 years remaining after this year. So the fund balance left in that sinking fund at the end of the year was about 747,000, which was an increase of about 93,000, 94,000 this last year. Most of those expenditures in this last year were tied to gym floor, secure entrances in the elementary and high school, and then also purchased some technology, MacBooks and iPads as well, made up the bulk of the expenditures in that sinking fund. And I know going forward, probably almost finished, or at least well underway, is the roof project, I believe, that's ongoing, it's gonna be funded from that sinking fund. Next fund is just a general capital project fund. At the end of the year, that has a fund balance of just under 500,000, 499,620, and that was after a decrease of about 122,000 for this last year. Had some interest income that was exceeded by a contribution that this fund paid for, chipped in for the track and field improvement project as well. That's 146,000 of expenditure. And then that leaves the last fund is the food service fund. The fund balance for this year for the food service fund increased just a little over the 16,000. Which brings that fund balance to about 421,000 at year end. It's probably heard this in the past years, but the state puts a threshold on how much fund balance that fund can have. So technically that 421 is an excess amount of what they technically, I'm not gonna say allow, because they allow you to exceed it, but it requires a spend down plan and some additional things you gotta do when you are above that. So that's over, as of June 30th, by about 108,000 or so, which many districts are in that same position. Nothing really to be concerned about regarding that. And then jump to page 17 and 18.
Can I have a question?
Yeah.
Question?
Yep.
Maybe you don't remember this, Derek, that look at the site improvement services, between the general fund and the capital project fund. I believe that was the expense for the track that we split 3 ways, right?
Yep, that was exactly.
So in the 208 and the capital projects fund, there's another 145 or something like that, right? That was split 3 ways,
yes,
right?
I actually have a note on that. I didn't mention that. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it was split across
Okay.
three, is it 3 or maybe even 4? Yeah, 3. And then I think the sinking fund may have also paid for a majority of those expenses.
That was split equally 3
Yeah,
ways.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yep, that's it. And then 17, 18. So all the funds we just spent time discussing, 17 and 18 basically show the makeup of that ending fund balance. For all funds but the general fund, most of that fund balance is tied to cash and investments. You can see if you look at any of those funds across, most of the assets are associated with the cash and investment categories. General fund obviously has a lot more going on. Few additional assets and liabilities. Biggest asset being outside of the investments being the July and August state aid that come in after year end. And then liability wise, teacher salaries and benefits make up the majority of those liabilities that are listed there. And then there was also a short-term note of 800,000 as well that would have been paid in August. Next page is page 16. Just as I opened, I mentioned I talked about GASB 101 and how it increased the liability for the district. Just wanted to kind of show you what that dollar amount was on page 16, far right column. If you move up 3 lines, you'll see a number 73,597. So basically the liability that we had last year at 24, because of the new standard, it increased that by about 74,000, just so you could kind of see that as a number and how that sits, on the financials. I wanted to point that out. And right here, we're looking at, and on the next few pages as well in front of this is the full accrual level, not necessarily, this is where we incorporate any debts like pension liability, the OPEB asset, fixed assets, bonds payable, they all get encompassed at this level. You guys you're more concerned at that fund level we were just looking at, but I just wanted to point that out. On this same page, you'll see that the net position at the end of the year, last year was the first year that in many years in which that flipped to being positive and not being a deficit. So not only was it positive last year, but this year we increased that positive amount to where you got a net position of 4.1 million after an increase of 3.9 million this year. Not that it makes a big difference to anyone here, but I would say less than half the districts, have a positive net position number. Again, we're bringing in a net pension liability, which you can see on page 15, it's about 15 million, which is an estimate, and it's a split between the big pension liability of all the districts. So typically that number causes districts to go to a deficit, but because of the assets that you have, because you got low debt for the most part overall, that allows for a positive net position. And like I said, I'd be shocked if it was half the districts in the state had a positive number there. So overall, that's a good indicator of where the district's at financially too, in my opinion. Last thing in the audit, just gonna have you flip to is towards the back, page 91 and 92, I believe. Just real quick on this, so as you're aware, the district receives federal funding, and as you spend that federal funding, if it's above a certain threshold, which this year was $750,000, we're required to do what we call a single audit, which essentially we take a major program as determined, a few guidelines and restrictions on how we set that, and do some compliance and some control testing on that program. For this year, you did exceed that $750,000 mark, which is on page 92. Under the column current year expenditures, it's got a letter C underneath it. That was what your current year federal expenditures were for this last year, the $1,022,000. So because of that, we have to go through our requirements, and the program we selected was the food service program, child nutrition cluster, technically it's called, but that's your breakfast and lunch program. So we did our test on that. We found everything to be in compliance and in good shape there for this year. And I also want to point out that starting next year, that threshold, that 750,000 threshold to have a single audit, that's actually increasing to $1 million. So being up to $1,022,000, depending on what happens with some federal funding, increases, decreases, et cetera, very well could not have to have a single audit next year, very close to that $1 million threshold. We'll kind of just have to be in contact with Taylor and Liz and kind of see where we're at so we can plan for that as next year audit approaches. In May and June and so on, but it very well could be that single audit next year, which would be nice for everyone. Less work for us and less cost for you guys, so totally fine with that. And then the last thing is there should be a single letter that everyone has out in front of them. Looks like this, communication with those charged with governance at the top of it. So in this letter is where I can just, anything I want to mention, good, bad, neutral, to the board, is often where I'll put in this letter. And I have a couple things in here, all just general comments or positive comments, excuse me, that I just wanted to point out. On the second page of that, towards the bottom, is where there's two of them, and then the next page there's two more. That first one is condition of accounting records. Records were in good shape and prepared, when we showed up for the audit. We always appreciate that. Appreciate the work with Taylor, Liz, and everyone on their team at the ISD. So because of that, I believe it warranted, having that comment in here and letting you all know that. We talked about the excess food balance a little bit already. There's a little bit more detail, on that within that comment if you want to read it. Flipping the page, this is just a real general comment, and utilizing the ISD for their IT services. You guys are in good hands, but just want to point this out that there's risks of attacks to governments mainly with emails and phishing scams and that stuff. So just be cautious of of anything you're clicking on and getting in your emails. It's happening more and more each day. And then lastly, a general comment as well is with sinking fund being new to the district, there are some strict guidelines on what you can use that money for, it's not, you know, just for anything. So I wanted to point that out, you know, basic guidelines for that are repair and replacement, yes. If it's more of a maintenance cost, a lot of times the sinking fund isn't allowed to pay for those costs. And with that, that was all I had. I'm happy to take some questions here, and then I'll probably get running. I gotta get to Everett, School District and do a board meeting there tonight, so, any questions, I'll take those.
The unfunded retirement liability of $15 million, I know there was a lot of stuff going on about it's MIPSers, right, is that what they call it?
Yeah.
Now, has that reduced our liability any significant amount?
Yeah, for the last 2 years, there's been significant headway on that. And I believe it's 2038 is the year in which they're still anticipating that.
That'll be paid off.
Be no longer underfunded.
Okay.
The OPEB piece of that, you know, has flipped, as you guys might be aware, to an asset that started last year. That asset increased even this year, which ties a lot to the decreased OPEB contributions, or I think it's at 0 right after September. So really the contributions on the OPEB side, they've handled that. So it's the pension piece. But yeah, I mean, this last year it was 3 million or so, and it went down. I think it was 3 or 4 the year before that.
So what you're saying is 2038, this 15 million will be paid off, and there won't be any ongoing additions? I mean, at that point, it'll be supposedly fully funded?
Right.
Based on their projections,
Based on
there's a lot that goes into that, you know, and.
But that's the plan?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's many projections and various factors that go into determining that, so. But yeah, they're still on, I believe they're still on pace, and it was good to see the last 2 years make some headway on that, because I was having my doubts on whether they were gonna be able to meet that.
Yeah.
But yeah, good question on that.
Anybody else? Thanks, Derek.
Yeah, no problem, thank you.
You bet. All right. Moving on, we're gonna move on to our routine matters, approve our August board minutes. Hopefully everyone had time to look those over.
Make the motion to approve.
Or
We have a motion support for our August minutes. Is there any discussion on those? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Consider general fund invoices for payment. Matt?
Alright, I would like to make a motion to pay $251,765.39 from the general fund and $61,672.01 from food service fund.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have support?
Support.
We have motion support for our invoices. Was there any questions anybody had on those? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Reports and communications, myself, I really don't have anything to report on. I did get a letter here from Mr. Ken Borton about our letter that we submitted. Talked about what they have got accomplished so far, but not a lot, but.
Blank sheet? Is it a blank sheet?
No,
Oh,
it wasn't blank.
just checking.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all I had. Superintendent.
Yeah, so we do have a presentation for you tonight on our last year's testing data. I'm gonna go through my report, and then we'll kind of segue into this and lead right into the principal's reports too. So, just a couple of things. Sinking Fund Committee, it involves community members. There's a meeting tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. We'll be reviewing our sinking fund dollars, our facility plans, kind of expectations of the sinking fund dollars in thoughts going forward, as well as getting their input on what they see as priorities for the school district. So looking forward to that meeting. I think we're going to try to plan on meeting 3 times a year. As you guys know, most of our projects that we've done this year have taken the majority of our sinking fund and then some. So we're getting to a place where we kind of have some extra funding, but potentially, big projects ahead too. So looking forward to that meeting. Our sinking fund committee did meet, or I'm sorry, our building and grounds committee did meet. I'm probably gonna jump down to the committee report there, Kevin, but.
Okay, that's fine.
And we discussed our flooring bids that we have on the agenda for tonight, as well as asbestos abatement bids, which would go right along with the flooring, with that. And we also discussed our preschool parking, area over to the south of the bus garage across the drive there. We can fit in about 14 parking spots, angled parking there. The thought with that is to have our preschool employees park there. What we're running into is, as our preschool is growing, we have more and more parents picking up at the same time, and we don't have the capacity of that pickup. And of course, those parents, we want them to get out of their vehicles, go into the preschool, because we don't want 3 and 4 year olds climbing in cars by themselves. But it's causing kind of a little bit of a traffic jam or concern when we have buses pulling out and parents are parking there along the grass and different areas. So I think that that's gonna be a good improvement for that. We're gonna just start out with gravel with that parking area and potentially go to asphalt down the road. I think we're gonna go ahead and do that. We're hoping for preschool funds, but feel that we need to kind of make this move now. With gravel, even if preschool doesn't cover it, that we probably need to proceed with that. Don't see where that's gonna hinder the district in any long-term planning or anything like that, where that's gonna block us in any way, but could be a benefit for us, even if it's for 2, 3, 4 years, to have that parking there, with the hopes that our preschool will continue to grow, especially with the free preschool for all, for that. So we also are going to go out to bid for our handicap ramp at the athletic complex. We do have some additional funds in our sinking fund dollars that we could potentially use. We do have funds in our capital projects funds that we can use, and we do have funds in our general fund that we can use to kind of complete that project. But we don't know until we get a bid for it and get a price on what that could potentially look like. So I reached out to Floyd Morris at Preen and Newhoff to go ahead and proceed with a bid and kind of see where we come in at with that. I can tell you this year, I don't think you realize it until it's just kind of like the red car theory, right? Where if you buy a red car, all of a sudden you start seeing red cars everywhere. And you don't realize how steep that hill was, that incline was, until you started looking at that closer, and then you start seeing people walking up and down that. I mean, you just start looking at that and see that that is a concern for that. So our budget was approved by the state. There are some, they laugh over there, there's still some hiccups with it and some potentially lawsuits on some decisions made that could cause some barriers, but we're thankful that we're getting our state aid note and we'll be able to make payroll without any concerns for that. But we don't have a projected outlook on how that benefits our district or hurts our district, just because it's so new to us. And like I said, there's competitive grants in there that we don't know what that all entails. And sadly, when you have competitive grants, Northern Michigan schools typically don't qualify for those grants. So we'll see. But like I said, the good news is we did receive a per pupil increase, but also that we have a budget and we can make payroll. And we no longer have a spending freeze, so I need to probably send that email out because everyone's kind of like holding off on that. So I just wanted to ride that wave as long as I could. But that's what I had. Any questions on that before we go into our presentation? All right, so a quick presentation for us here tonight, just on the testing data, our scores, and kind of our enrollment numbers. You see the wheels up rampers, the good to great journey starts here. This is what happened last time too, isn't it? There we go. Our district goals, just kind of summarize these. 5% increase in our math instruction and our testing scores by 2026. We will be looking at new goals this year and be implementing new goals for next year, for the next 5 years, going forward. PBIS, we are fully implemented in PBIS and are continuing that. We are taking time to look at our implementation and how we need to proceed, or do we, what do we need to do to make changes to? We are kind of on our own now. We're not with the state of Michigan anymore, guiding us and meeting with their coach monthly. So they felt confident in us going forward, so we're gonna feel confident in ourselves going forward. So reading and English language arts, the same 5% increase in our testing scores and proficiency by 2026. In our social emotional learning goals, teaching self-awareness, self-management skills to achieve school and life success. And we've been monitoring this through attendance, discipline referrals, and academics. We also just started a new program in the elementary school, and it escapes me now, Mr.
Frenzy.
Frenzy, thank you. Where the entire elementary school goes through and it has a theme for that month. The first month was, and don't tell me because you announced it every day. I'm on the spot.
I remember,
I know, we need each other, right?
Yep.
Yes, nailed it.
but it changed.
Yeah, it did change, and now it's be kind. It's good to be kind. It's
Be kind.
and rewind.
All the time.
Be kind all the time. Aging myself
And
here,
rewind.
be kind and rewind. Some of you in the room probably don't know what that means, but never had the joy of Blockbuster in the VHS tape,
Oh,
so. Okay. I could go on about that. Our 25-26 student count, you see our numbers there. I'll be honest with you, this is fluctuating daily still. We had 2 new elementary students enroll today, or start today,
we have
3.
3 new kids starting this week.
Yep, so I knew of 2. And we also have kids that are withdrawing or moving, right? So this is kind of where we're at, but it gives you a good picture. We kind of knew coming in that our kindergarten numbers were gonna be a little down this year. We're at 68, first grade's at 87. You guys can read the numbers there, but you see that we're really healthy, first through 9th grade. So one thing we wanna take note with, right? Derek showed us, that we've been very fortunate with our enrollment projection, with our enrollment, right? We've been increasing. Fantastic, and that's because of the great things that we're doing in McBain and the staff are doing in McBain. But another factor is also, we've had smaller graduating classes and larger kindergarten groups coming in, okay? So one thing that we're gonna wanna monitor is if we start seeing a trend of smaller kindergarten classes coming in and larger groups graduating, say 9th grade, coming in, and we have 65 kids coming into kindergarten, that's a 30 student loss. That's a huge revenue issue, right? So it's just something that we wanna be mindful of and be aware of. We've reaped it, we wanna continue to reap it, the benefits from it, but we wanna monitor it as well, okay?
So there'll be another count in February, right?
There is another count in
So
February.
the average will pertain, that will determine our state aid, is that what's that?
Go ahead.
Oh, so it's 90%. Oh, you go ahead. 90% fall count, 10% spring count.
Oh, okay, so it's pretty heavy on
Of the
this.
prior.
Okay, all right.
And for whatever reason, I feel like your spring count is typically higher. Every year we get 10%, so. Our student enrollment, again, you can see our trend line, we're staying pretty steady. And what Derek had pointed out, I mean, he's absolutely right. A lot of districts in our area have a declining enrollment. And we've been very fortunate to continue the steady line. Our school of choice, you guys are aware that this year we kind of did our school of choice and district release a little bit differently. We only allowed school of choice students in kindergarten. And that's to help benefit our preschool numbers, right? And people aren't gonna bring their kids to our preschool if we don't accept them into our school district. But also, if we didn't have these 22 kids in our kindergarten, we'd be looking at 46 students in kindergarten. Which that can cause a revenue issue as well. In first grade, we accepted 1 district release student, in second grade 1, third grade 2, and fourth grade 1. 6th grade 1, 8th and 9th, each one student. District release is a little different than school of choice. School of choice, you can come, and if we have our window open and you're within our number, we accept you, right? District release, for lack of better words, is kind of you apply to come, okay? So we can look at your student record, we can see where you're at as far as credit-wise, high school. High school is a great example. You could have a junior in high school come, supposed to be a junior in high school, come to enroll in McBain, and they have 0 credits. Well, that's gonna become a burden for McBain to get that student to where he needs to be, and they get him to graduate. So we have the option to deny that student, whether if it was school of choice, they could just come right in. I believe all but a couple of our district release students we've accepted. So we did not have that big of a demand as far as school of choice goes this year.
So these school of choice students, once they're accepted, they're here for the duration, right?
They are.
And their siblings?
No, not necessarily their siblings. Their siblings would also, depending on what grade, would potentially have to, lack of better words, apply to come in. If we have school of choice numbers and you have siblings already enrolled in school, they take priority.
Okay.
Yeah, those students take priority.
So what's our total school of choice enrollment right now?
Here we go. You're welcome. Right now we have 310 students incoming, school of choice. So if you start in kindergarten and you are one of those school of choice kids, you're considered school of choice all the way through. Okay, so this would be kindergarten through 12th grade. So 13 years, 310 kids. The other thing to look at.
Even though they don't stay here?
No, if they stay here.
Oh,
That
okay.
would be if they stayed here.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing to look at is our outgoing. We have 144 students that live in McBain's district that do not attend school in McBain. So we have that too, right? We have an inflow and we have an outflow. Kind of here is our draw of students. Now, this data is 1 year old, okay? Because we don't necessarily have all of our count stuff in yet, and it's not been updated on state websites. Orange are kids coming into McBain. That bluish, purplish, I'm not sure what color that is, are kids leaving to go to that district.
Interesting.
Are they all in person leaving or no?
No, some attend virtual schools. In my quick math of looking at withdrawals and looking at, we have about 16 kids attending a local virtual school, high school.
So if a student in the blue category, they leave here, would they have to reapply as a school of choice to come back in? Or if they live in the district, would they automatically be entitled?
If they live in the district, they're already entitled.
They could just come back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, if they were to leave, a school of choice student was to leave, and they were to come back, they would have to reapply.
Say it again?
They would have to apply again, school of choice or district release, because they're not a resident student.
No, if they don't live in the
If they
district?
don't
Yeah,
live in the
okay, yeah,
district.
okay.
All right, I'm handing it over to Mr. Finstrom for our attendance.
All right, so this is kind of our historical attendance that we look at every month is in our board reports, just to see kind of where we are, keeping a pulse of it. Very proud to say we are staying above our 95% average daily attendance rate. All statistics show if you're above 95%, you are doing phenomenal. You are in the top of the districts in the US in there, and you don't have a major attendance concern or an issue going on. And we credit a lot of that to our staff and to PBIS and just keeping a welcoming environment that kids want to be here. So excited to see those numbers go. Just a refresher, for the month is the first column, and then it's the average for the school year to that date. So that number didn't really change till you get to September. But happy to see us staying above that 95% threshold as we go forward. So that's our year-to-year comparison, month to month. as we go through. And then this is our historical yearly data, and looking at this is what gets reported up to the state level, pulling from Power School, and we were doing a deep dive with high school because we were a little bit shocked as we were looking at our percentages. So if you look at the state's average for students who are chronically absent, and that is 10% or more days missed. So 18 days or more makes you chronically absent. The state's at 27.9% of the students. Our local ISD is at 31.9% of the students. McBain overall is at 12.5%. High school, we were really shocked at that number as we did a deep dive. That number includes if a kid started the year, was here for 3 months, and then left, but out of that 3 months, they were gone, say half of it, that counts against us as a district. So when we dove deeper into it, to help Becky's anxiety and mine as well, out of our students that were here the full year, end of the school year, we're only at 11%. For that part, so much better looking, so please don't look at that and be like, as we go through. But again, our average daily attendance, we are riding very close at 95%, and continue to implement more things with the kids that are coming up as chronically absent, working with Jess Whetstone at the ISD, our own truancy policies here, and working with the courts. We have kids on plans, just different resources put in place to help incentivize the kids to be here and kind of break that trend, to continue to improve it. So overall, we are sitting very, very strong, especially when you start looking at the percentages compared to the state and to the ISD. McBain is doing phenomenal, and very proud of our staff, very proud of the students, and the leadership to make this a place where students want to be.
So why are elementary kids absent? I don't get that.
They're sick.
I mean, is that sickness? Or?
Mainly sickness.
Okay.
I mean, the amount of mucus that spreads.
Okay. So that includes illness?
Yeah, that includes illness, that includes everything.
Vacations, we have a lot of kids who go away for a whole week.
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of getting to be a more prominent thing, it seems like.
You said vacation?
Vacation, because
Go travel, you can travel a lot cheaper.
Yep, I have a lot of kids who go in February, they'll be gone for a whole week, some right before Christmas.
Another thing that just I've noticed just from my office, there is some confusion, all schools, when the nurse sends them home, as far as, do they then need a doctor's note? What can the nurse do as far as excusing them? And then if they're like hand, foot, and mouth has been going around like crazy right now, well then they're sent home because that's extremely contagious. But then do they need a note? And we're like, well, there's nothing you can do for hand, foot, and mouth, but then there's some discrepancies on whether or not they need a note and what the nurse can approve and not approve.
If it is a note coming from a doctor's office saying Becky Rodenbaugh had hand, foot, and mouth, she'll be out for a week, and writes that on the note, we mark that as medical. So the state will accept any form of doctor's notes as a legitimate excuse, and funerals. So if you're home because you're vomiting, and please do keep your child home for that state.
Yep.
The state counts that as a parent excuse. So a parent excuse does not go as a state approved absence, even though we know they are. One of the nice things that we have having the wellness center here in McBain is if Nurse Megan says, nope, this kid has a fever, they need to go home, 24 hours fever free, so that's gonna be the rest of the day and all of tomorrow. She signs the note, that is a medical excuse. So one of the great things we do with our parents is if there's a question, bring them in. Megan is here available before school starts at drop-off times. Run them into the clinic. Megan's like, nope, they still need to be home. She writes it. That is a medical excuse.
Does she write it then like for the hand, foot, and mouth kids?
She can write it for that
She
too.
can.
Yep.
Does the parent have to ask for that?
I know, I can't speak for all the offices. In our office, we encourage them to ask Megan, talk to Megan. Megan knows to write notes in that, so a lot of times it comes out that way. But if she is sending them home, then she will typically get in contact with the office to make that a medical excuse. So a great resource, very thankful that was approved in the state budget to keep Megan and Amanda here. It has been a game changer for the district in having them.
So the vacation thing is interesting. You're saying maybe take that in February, is that opposed to spring break? I mean,
It's so much more expensive to travel during spring break, so you pull them a week.
so just to save dollars, not go on spring break.
Yep.
Correct.
And we have conversations with families ahead of time, and I have some that it's been a routine where they call and say, hey, we're gonna be gone this week, do you wanna send my letter now, or wait until it's time? You know, they understand, they get it, but typically those aren't kids that are gonna miss large chunks outside of that vacation window, and so we can work with that.
And is that more dominant at the elementary level than, isn't
Some
it
families.
pretty much across the board?
Yeah, it's across the board,
And hopefully they get their work ahead of time.
yes.
And take it with them, so when they come back, they're not behind. And one thing too is, to follow up with what Becky was asking, we have a very good relationship with our health clinic. I don't know if our other schools do, have that, for that, but also, you know, our goal with our attendance is, you know, kudos to the parents too for getting their kids here and making sure they're here. But our hopes is too that if you're coming to school every day, you're getting a great education, but also that's gonna spill into the workforce, right? But I need to be at work, you know, I need to be there. And so hopefully that's our end goal, so. We'll go on to our high school data.
So my slides are just the 11th grade because they take the SAT and the state testing, the M-STEP for science and social studies. So I have the us at the top of my little chart over here with compared to the ISD and the state. So that's ELA. And that's the amount of students that were advanced or proficient. So they met it or even were advanced. So we are ahead of the ISD and just below the state in ELA. Math, we're quite a bit ahead of the ISD and the state in advanced and proficient. And then we switch over to the M-STEP, so state testing. This is science. And again, we are ahead of the ISD and the state in science in percent advanced and proficient. And my last one is social studies. And again, we're ahead of both. I attribute a lot of this to consistent staff. I don't have a lot of change in my staff, so we see nice scores, and I think it's a lot is to them.
I think I ask this question every year. What does proficiency mean? When you say 52 proficient, what does that mean?
There's a cut score.
Pardon me?
There's like a cut score. Like you need to get a, for lack of a better, like a 70% to pass it.
Okay.
And so they do or above.
Okay.
They need a score or they go above it.
So the state says, if you meet this cut score, we think that you're pretty proficient in this. You understand the standards of this content.
But we're saying 50% of our kids get there. That just doesn't seem real impressive to me. I'm sorry. I don't,
Yes.
I don't understand.
And we talk about that, right, as a staff. So I shared this with our staff. So yes, we're pleased that we're ahead of the state and the ISD. But right, that isn't typically what you would go,
Yeah.
oh, that's fantastic.
And in some cases, 35%, that just doesn't seem, I don't know.
Yep.
I'm a low school, I guess that doesn't look very good.
Yeah.
We're with you, Ken.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're very proud of their achievement being ahead of the ISD
Yeah.
and state, but
Yeah.
it's not
There's
saying
room
much.
for improvement.
Yeah, for the ISD and state.
So is that state benchmark, is that set based upon, like, expected criteria or, I mean, this is what the student should know? Is that the way they set their, like?
So the SAT is national norms, so it's a national cut score based on reading and math standards.
Okay.
And then science and social studies are based on the state standards.
And they average how students do
Yeah,
across
okay.
the entire state and then across our ISD.
So are there grade by grade objectives that you want kids to be at? Okay,
Absolutely.
okay, that's, okay.
And it's quite a plethora list that we're required to, but we never know going into testing, what is the test going to focus on this year? So the test ever changes, and so we could be like, man, power standards and geometry this year, so we're really getting hammered out because, you know, we tested low the previous year, we're really gonna focus on it, and then the next year, they're like, oh, we're gonna go algebraic thinking. We're like, oh, okay, we're solid, and now we put, you know, a lot of effort to try and fill in the hole, so it's kind of it's not an excuse, but it's an ever-moving target, and we don't get to see the target till after the test. So, that does pose a challenge, because there's a lot of content to cover. The test is only a couple hours long, you can't cover everything in it, and then we just find out afterwards what they put the priority on it for the testing cycle. Then we react and find out the target moved again.
I'd always had the perception that we struggled in math, but math looked pretty strong, I thought, in this analysis.
Would you say if I can say this right, the ELA proficiency is affected by the ELL percentage of students, you know, a high percentage of?
It could be,
I would think
that's
it would
only
be harder.
it's only my junior, so it's a small number.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors into, that.
So we can break down each grade level as we go through. In 6th grade, it is M-STEP, 7th grade is M-STEP, 8th grade will go PSAT and M-STEP. So 6th grade is just English and math. If you look, you can see the state is about 40.5, our ISD is 29.4%, and McBain is at 38. Oh, sorry, I'm reading backwards. Yeah, dyslexia, that's great. So the state is at 38.6 and McBain is at 40.5. So we're pumped to see that we're higher than the state, but again, that's only 40.5% of our students are proficient as we continue to work in that. Looking at our 6th grade math, state 31, ISD almost 24, McBain almost 38. So again, doing very well on the average as we go through with this, and we've been seeing a bigger jump in our 6th grade as we've been putting a lot of effort into our transition from 5th to 6th. It's been historically a drop point for us. So very pleased to see our focus on mathematics is paying off. 7th grade English, you can see again very similar, again ahead of the state as we go through. 7th grade math, doing very well again comparatively to our other districts and across the state. 8th grade, we look at our PSAT, and compared to the state, again, we're rivaling higher. I'm very proud to see those numbers in our English and our math. We are below the state here. Our math scores did take a dip this year. We are looking into that to see what we can do to strengthen that up comparatively, historically, for our 8th grade scores. Close to the state, but as you can see, the ISD also took a major dip in this past year as we go forward. And then our 8th grade social studies, just below the state and doing well above the ISD. And in the 8th grade science, doing very well overall again as we look at that.
It looks like we shine amongst the ISD.
Yes.
Almost across the board.
These are 3rd grade reading scores. We are above both, we're above the ISD, slightly below the state average. And so I've had some conversations with the 3rd grade team about what we can do to strengthen reading, and then we've been doing a lot of work, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, to strengthen reading as they get to 3rd grade. Because it's a shift from learning how to read to reading to learn. And this is the first time you're seeing the assessment, so we're having some conversations this year about how we can better prep our 3rd graders to take this lengthy test that they have to take at the end of the year. So we're putting some things in place to help with that. 3rd grade math looks great, 54.8%, above both ISD and state. 4th grade reading, above ISD and state, 44.3%, and having some conversations with 4th grade too about things we can put in place to help get them ready. We're really thinking stamina is playing a factor in how they're performing, so what can we do to build their stamina as we go through the year? And then 51.1% proficient and advanced on math, well above ISD and state, so very pleased with that. 5th grade reading, we're above 50% for our students, which is well above the ISD and the state for reading. and math well above ISD and state. So our math scores across the board, look pretty good. We would love them to be in the 60s and 70s, that's what we're pushing for, but we're pleased with these results comparatively. Science, we were almost 60% proficient in advanced, which we're very excited about, well above the ISD and state. And social studies, 36.7%, which I believe is our highest score proficiency or advanced ever at the 5th grade level, so we're very excited about that, and well above again.
Any questions?
All right, so that wraps up our superintendent and principal's reports.
Correct. Do you have anything else
Do you have anything else you need to report on? All right, we'll move on to our business managers, Taylor and Liz. You probably don't have a lot to say after.
Not a ton, but so as Mr. Ingham shared, as you probably don't know, we have a signed budget for the state, and there's just many details that many different organizations and groups are working through to try to help us out. So, as he shared, we don't know what the impact is for McBain quite yet. We're still waiting for more details and questions to be answered before we can dig deeper into that. And then the federal government shutdown. We are gonna be watching that to see how long that were to continue, because if it does continue for a couple months, which we know it really doesn't, we would get concerned about federal funding, specifically with meal reimbursements. We have been told there's enough to cover 2 to 3 months of reimbursement, even with the shutdown, but if it were to extend beyond that, we might have to be looking at a different story. But we're hopeful we won't get there. And then the big thing on our agenda right now was getting our FID submitted, which we did. So that is how the state gets a hold of our financials into the database. And if we were to not get that submitted, we would not get state aid. So we were able to get that submitted last week.
Appreciate that.
MESB put out a projection by school district. I don't know if you've seen that or not. Did you see that? Okay. It looks like we will gain in every category, but maybe not in the MIPSers. That's what I'm seeing anyway, that we would lose money there potentially.
Yeah, we're still waiting to kind of see what
Okay.
that impact for, I mean, we know the ones that were completely eliminated, and we know that there's one that's gonna be reduced and one that's gonna be increased, so we're still
Okay.
kind of waiting to figure out the overall effect of that. And
Yeah.
then on that as well, on that projection, enrollment, you know, they used the enrollment figures from like the August state aid status
Mhm.
report, and so that can have a play on that too as well.
Yeah.
If we have
There
more,
was-
if we have more students.
Yeah, their
it will look
analysis showed that
better, and
bottom line, we would gain about 550,000 just, and I don't know how they do their thing,
right,
but
yeah,
that's just what
yeah,
they sent the rough numbers.
right, yep. And then, like I said, it depends on your pupil count where that comes in.
Mhm.
It sounds like it's looking good, so that number might even actually be better. And then the 31 AA funds is another thing that will be a discussion that we'll
Mhm.
have, because there's some new requirements for that. And Scott probably has heard of those, so, yeah. So that will be a discussion that we'll have to have, and you have to actually opt in to that, this year, and some of it is competitive and some of it will be a per pupil, but, yeah, so, yeah, the MIPSers piece of it is one of the ones that's a little hard to exactly figure out.
Yeah.
Are we gonna, you know, I think it'll be a net increase overall, but just how much of one is, yeah.
Okay. Sounds good, thank you. We're gonna skip over the committee report, Scott talked about that, so anything from MASB?
Not a lot. The conference, the annual conference is coming up next week, and I think we have 3 of us attending all or part of that. So we're looking forward to that. Nothing else really significant. The Board of Directors nominations, my term does expire in March of 2026. So we'll be getting nomination between November 17 and January 14 will be, they will be submitting nominating petitions to the districts. I do intend to run for another 3 years. So, and we'll, but that'll be, the voting will be between January and March. So that's a little bit ways off, yeah. But other than that, not a huge, everything's been focused on the budget down there, so.
All right, thanks, Ken. Moving on to our action items. A, Russ Rodenbaugh, new transportation director.
So moved.
Support.
Motion support for Russ. Any questions or discussion?
Well, just remember, we we hired him as an interim, to make sure it was a good fit for him and the district. And it's going very, very well. So we just want to go ahead and put him in that position, and then that allows us the opportunity to hire a bus driver instead of keeping her on as a sub, so.
All right, motion support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. B, new hire recommendation, Cheyenne Agama, bus driver.
Motion. Support.
Motion support for Cheyenne. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. C, new hire recommendation, Amber Cruz, custodian.
Motion. Support.
Motion support for Amber.
Is this additional staff or?
This is the part-time position,
Okay.
4 hours.
All right, motion support for Amber. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? D, Terry Kennedy, secretary, retirement.
I'll make the motion. Support.
Motion support for Terry's retirement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Sure we'll miss her, yeah. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yeah, sad for us.
Yep.
Excited for her.
E, Taylor Agama maternity leave request.
Motion. Support.
Motion support for Taylor's maternity leave. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. F, NHS Chicago trip itinerary.
Motion.
Support.
Motion support for the Chicago trip. All those in,
Who's the advisor for this?
Mr. Murphy.
Pardon me?
Mr. Sean Murphy.
Oh, okay. Are there scholarship monies available for kids if they?
I don't know of any, my son's going and we'll just,
Okay, but if someone can't fund it, are there scholarship available?
I'm sure we would find a way, yes.
Okay, all right.
all those in favor of the Chicago trip, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? G, the Nixon flooring bid, $451,000 for the elementary flooring. Motion, all right.
Support.
Motion support, I'm assuming we all read Scott's update and knows all the details and how we come up with this recommendation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. H, quality environmental services for the elementary floor asbestos bid, $57,000.
Motion.
Support.
Motion support for the asbestos abatement. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? All right, and that concludes our action items. Public comment is next. Hearing none, seeing none, we can move on to board round table. Anything anybody has on their mind?
I just need to say, we have really noticed increased traffic, community traffic on the track. I don't know if they were staying away for some reason, but since we redid the track, I really feel guilty now. There's something about there almost all the time.
Yeah, we see people out there all the time.
Good to hear.
I'd just like to say on record from Mr. Murphy, there are scholarships available.
What's that?
Oh, thank you. Mr. Murphy may have just contacted me to say there are scholarships available.
Okay,
Perfect.
sorry.
Perfect, thank you.
I know they can volunteer.
Good to know.
You must have been listening.
Things too.
Yeah,
You must be listening.
Can't get away with anything anymore.
Good.
Just kudos to the staff, district-wide for the scores.
For sure.
So
Yeah.
keep up the good work.
Like it says, a good, great journey starts here. We're doing good, let's get great.
You just made Scott's heart.
I know. They just fluttered a little bit.
He's gonna be skipping out of the meeting, by the way.
I motion,
No, just the consistency. I think
Yeah.
it's the fact that we have consistency. We have consistent leadership. We have consistency in the classroom. We've had some new teachers, but I think they're mentored well, and that makes a big difference. So, yeah, I
we're on
agree.
the right track.
Motion.
A motion, we adjourn.
I support that.
Okay. Support, all those in favor say aye.
I.